Welcome to the Be the Ultimate Assistant podcast with Bonnie and Vicki. I'm Vicki Sokol-Evans.
And I'm Bonnie Low-Kramen. Welcome, everyone.
Welcome. Hi, Bon.
Hey, Vic. So here we are on episode 16 with our guest, Chris Taylor, to talk about landing your dream job 2016.
And this is part 2. Do you want to get everybody up to speed on what happened in our previous episode?
Yeah, Chris Taylor, in part 1, Chris gave us a great overview of what's going on in the job market in late 2015, headed into 2016, about how competitive it is, how very competitive it is, how more men are joining the profession, how he's seeing a lot of assistants around the world having a lack of some basic skills, and that there's such a pressing and urgent need for training. So really great stuff about a real perspective and an overview of what's going on. Now in part 2, we want to drill down and get very granular about the nuts and bolts of what this job search is all about. We're going to talk about resumes and interviews and money. We're going to talk real dollars and cents and pounds and pence about the job market.
So, hopefully not pence.
Yeah, hopefully not pence. So off we go. Vic,
yes.
You want to tell? So Vic, you, in part 1, I talked about my dream job with Olympia Dukakis. I think you want to tell us about your dream job, yeah?
I do. Well, I want to talk about what I thought was my dream job and kind of how I transitioned. So I was in Dallas probably about 10 years ago, and I was interviewing for a personal assistant role to a high net worth entrepreneur in Dallas, and the personal assistant role meant that I was going to be working out of his penthouse apartment and handling all the personal aspects and collaborating with the executive office that he had. So I was one of the last 2 candidates being interviewed, and my next step was to go to the home office. Beautiful home. I got to see my workspace and talk a little bit about kind of what the day-to-day would look like for this particular position. And I remember looking at the environment, looking at the desk and the technology there and the chair. I mean, very specific things. And in my head, I was already automating the business processes that I saw that could be automated and streamlined. And it dawned on me that, you know what, something clicked, and I realized at that moment that I don't necessarily want to be sitting in that chair, that I really wanted to support the person sitting in that chair to help her or him, because I didn't know who the other candidate was, help him or her streamline, automate that role. And that's when the switch happened to me when I moved from the assistant role to training assistants. And that was like an aha moment for me, that my dream job was to support superhero assistants, especially when technology left them powerless. So that's a little bit about my dream job moment, and kind of an idea that sometimes what you think is your dream job may not be your dream job. So doing a lot of research and understanding yourself is really important. So,
and I just add, Vic, that assistants all over the world are benefiting from the fact that you had that aha moment that day.
And I hope so, and I know it's inspired some other assistants to even pursue training because of that story. So I'll tell it as many times as I can, and have the opportunity to. So hopefully, if it's helping people, that's what I know I want to do. Thank you for that, Bonnie. And then so what we'll do is welcome back our amazing guest, Chris Taylor. I'll go ahead and read his bio again for everyone that may not have listened to the previous episode, which I urge you to do. So Chris Taylor is the founder and managing director of CTA, Chris Taylor Associates. It's a London-based boutique and private recruitment service matching the most senior and talented executive and personal assistants with today's business leaders. Before the business was launched, Christopher spent 6 years getting to know the attributes, characteristics, and skills of the world's best executive and personal assistants in order to offer the finest recruitment service for both clients and candidates. Christopher is also the founder of Number 42. It's the world's first private members club for senior executive assistants. We want to welcome you back, Chris.
Hi, thanks ever so much.
Yay.
Welcome back.
Yay, welcome back. So I'm going to kick off, so you guys are going to hear more from me, but I want to kick off and kind of focus more on the resume and CV. And as we mentioned in the previous episode, we're going to be using the term resume for both of these episodes. But can you tell everyone what the difference is between a resume or CV?
There's a couple of differences. I mean, in terms of CV, CV means course of your life. That's what the Latin translation basically is. So they tend to be longer documents, more detailed, whereas a resume is often much more detailed towards the role in question that you would be sending your details in for. I think I would always recommend that candidates use the term that's most familiar with them in the territory which they are. So, for example, in the UK, the word CV is the format which hiring managers, HR professionals expect. In the US, it's different. They would use the word resume. So I see a lot of candidates who, for example, will send me a CV which they have, in the UK, which they have called a resume. It doesn't really make the document any more interesting or any more relevant, and I would always recommend that people use the terminology which is familiar in the market which they are looking for a role.
So do you mean so let's say I have a resume and I'm looking for a position in London or in any territory where they're used to the term CV. So I have a resume and I simply change the name, the title of it, to Vicki Evans CV. Does not make it a CV. Is that right?
You're absolutely right. So a CV, as I say, is course of your life. So it really warrants all of your roles that you have taken. So any permanent roles or any contract roles that you've had as an assistant. It really details everything and the key achievements within those particular roles that you've had. Whereas a resume would be much more geared towards the particular role in question that you are applying for. So it may not include, things that you did, let's say, 15 years ago or 10 years ago, which are not relevant to that particular role.
Is it correct to assume that a CV would be much longer than a two-page resume?
Well, a CV should really be no longer than 2 pages. Even for a CEO, I think their CV generally would be 2 pages. A resume would be much more. Let's say it was a executive assistant role within a private equity house or let's say a firm like that. And if your experience is, yes, some private equity, but actually you've spent time working in the pharmaceutical industry or you've spent time working in the construction industry, which are maybe not even roles that are connected to this position, I wouldn't detail those in a resume. I'd be much more likely to detail those in a CV.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, good distinction.
Is that
yeah, because in the course of my life, I've been around and working for a long, long time. I'm thinking, oh, you want my whole life story? I'll put it in a 20-page document for you. And you're like, no.
Well, I kind of think it's almost 2016, and I think the year 2000 to me feels like yesterday, but it isn't. It is 16 years ago. And I think that, a lot of those things are not necessarily relevant to what somebody is, let's say, looking for in their dream role in next year. I think we have to, you can always add more to any document which you're sending through. And if the hiring manager says, look, I can have some more information on this or what were you doing then, you can provide that. But what I don't think is a good idea is to send everything through, ad infinitum from the moment you left college, because it could be 30 years or 40 years of experience. That's very difficult for a hiring manager to A, to understand, or B, to have the time to read.
Yeah, speaking of that, how many resumes do you typically get for one position?
Oh gosh, it can be. For a role I had last year, it was 500 documents that people had sent through or resumes that they had sent. On average, I'd say about 120.
Wow.
Yeah. It's intense,
That's
and
incredible.
I hear that. I hear that from recruiters all over the U.S. too.
Yeah, and do you know how long I take to look at a resume? Probably around about 10 seconds for each one.
Wow, 10 seconds to look at a resume. So what is the process for scanning the stack and scaling it down to a manageable size? Because obviously you want to spend more time on the ones that are relevant to the role. You can't spend that much time on 500 resumes or 150 resumes or so.
No, you're absolutely right. It's impossible. And you know that we referred to tech savvy in the previous episode, and I think what candidates need to do is to read very carefully the job advert. So if it uses words such as tech savvy or degree educated or boutique financial services required, experience required. Those are the very, very key things that you use in the first, let's say, 10 words of any resume that you send. So you're signposting immediately to the recruiter that you've read the advert, you've understood what they're looking for, and you are signposting very clearly, this is a document that you should be reading. And where people bury that information, that's where it goes wrong.
Yeah, so the idea is like the first step of the process is to keep your resume in that stack. That is the number one objective when you send that resume. How do I get my resume to stay in that stack to be the final 10 that you then call or bring in or whatever the next process is?
What I would normally suggest is that if you're not clear about what the job advert is requiring in terms of skills or background or experiences, is actually ring the recruiter, is call the recruiter and say to them, look, I'm looking for, this excites me, I'm interested in this particular position. What are the key things that you need from me? What information is it that you require? And a good recruiter will take the time and explain to the candidate what it is they're looking for. You've already then made contact with the recruiter. He or she then will remember you. So when that document comes through, you can put in your covering email, great to talk to you 10 minutes ago. Here's the resume. Any questions, do give me a call. Look forward to the feedback. That really works. That maintains that relationship with the recruiter, which you may not have spoken to before. So that will, for me, that will keep that candidate very much front of mind. And I think that's the key thing I would say. If you're not sure, call the recruiter.
Well, that's a good advice. And would you encourage them to kind of create a bulleted, 3 or 4 bullets in the actual email that kind of maps their skills to the top requirements that you discussed on the phone?
Yeah.
Does that help you?
Absolutely. Because so for example, if the job advert says, college education required, then actually put that in the covering email. I am a college-educated assistant used to working for ultra-high net worth individuals in boutique financial services. Those are the key things of the job ad. To me, as a recruiter, I think, excellent, and it ticks lots and lots of boxes. There is, for example, a couple of gaps on that resume in terms of employment. I can forgive many, many things if the candidate can easily and clearly signpost for me what it is what it is their skills are, why they're applying, and why they are relevant. That saves so much time. So it's about saving the recruiter time. It's making it easy for that person to say, yes, that's a really good candidate. I'd like to meet them.
Yeah, I like that idea, that thinking about the recruiter's perspective, that you're wanting to save them time. And sometimes, and Bonnie notices I do this quite a bit, is I'll put myself in that person's position. So here I'm the candidate. I would pretend I have an executive assistant position open right now, and I just posted it. I get 500 resumes. What am I going to do in order to find the right candidate for this position, and kind of empathize with the recruiter and that process, and that will give you an idea of what you should or shouldn't do when you're trying to get an interview for your dream job.
So in terms of what I would expect from a candidate to make it life easy for the recruiter, let's just say, is make every communication with the recruiter relevant. Your resume should be, plenty of white space. There shouldn't be any grammatical errors. It should be 100% perfect. It should be 2 pages. I don't want to see 5 or 6 pages. I simply don't have the time to read anything beyond page 2. Beautifully formatted. Skills not buried within the document. Relevant information at the very top of the document. Don't provide a list of cliches such as, great communicator or team player or excellent organizer. None of those things, everybody can say that. And actually, as an executive assistant or as a senior executive assistant, then those things should be, those skills are basic in my eyes. That doesn't separate you from somebody else. And I think, if, for example, I've got 2 or 3 roles which I'm advertising, don't send me a CV for each or a resume for each role. You're either suited for one of them maybe 2 of them at best, but you're not suited for all 3. So blanket coverage is not a good idea, because it just says to me, actually rather desperate for a change. I wonder why they're desperate. What's going on in their, in their career? Maybe this is a bit of a problem. So I tend to avoid those situations, and it's just about, Vicky, you're amazing. You can beautifully format things. Your use of technology is world class. You could make something look beautiful. That's what you need to do for the recruiter to save them time. And as I say, build a relationship up with the recruiter. Talk to them first before you send the document through. Get an understanding of what the role is, and getting an understanding of what the client ultimately is seeking will save a disappointment on your part, but also it builds you a fantastic reputation with that recruiter, and that recruiter will come back to you.
Yeah, so let me ask you that. So you've got a stack of 500 resumes. Obviously, you have to look at it and go, yes, yes, no, 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 yes, no, no. What makes you say no? Like, what is that 1-second thing that makes you push someone to the no stack?
Complete irrelevance in terms of background and experience. So
are you actually getting to that phase? Are you reading it at that moment? Or are you just looking at the format, or both?
Both, actually. Poor formatting. If words are really squashed together, there's a lack of white space. It's difficult to find information. To be honest with you, I will probably put that in the waste paper bin. That's not something that I'm going to look at very closely. If I get something that is beautifully presented, accurate, wonderful experience, relevance is the key here. If it's relevant, I will read it. If we've all been given material at work before whereby it's really painful to read something that's been badly formatted and badly laid out. If it's easy and it's signposted, it's so much easier. And actually, it says to me that this assistant knows how to produce documents, because that to me is a basic skill for a world-class assistant.
Yeah, good point. Okay, I think that was helpful. Bonnie, do you have any more questions about the resume, that piece of it?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I don't.
Okay.
So we're ready to move on to working with recruiters?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's too bad that Chris doesn't have more strong opinions about things. That's all I have to say about this.
I'm sorry. I know.
I have to say that's what we loved about you in London, because here's the bottom line. Not all recruiters are made alike, and there are a ton of them. And I hear from assistants from all over the world about when they're involved in their job searches, and they're having frankly, some pretty awful experiences with recruiters. Folks who won't get back to them, or it feels like they're just all about the money, and they complain about job postings that are false just to get inquiries from the candidates. So, Chris, I feel like my job has been to find the finest recruiters in the land. And for us, you're one of those people. So,
that's very kind of you. Thank you.
Well, you are welcome. And so tell us the difference. Tell us what's the secret sauce with being a recruiter, and how you've shared already some great tips about what you want from candidates, to be relevant, certainly their resume, no grammatical errors, perfect. Talk to us about the relationship, a little bit more about the relationship between recruiters and candidates, and how the relationship works. What's your relationship with the client, and what do candidates need to know about that to help everybody be successful?
Okay, recruiters are human.
No
Lots
way.
of candidates will probably say they're not, but we are. We're human, and we make mistakes, and we're, extremely fallible, as much as anybody else is. It's a bit, like if you were, in a band or signing a band, and you might think, well, actually, perhaps in the '60s, you might have passed over the Beatles, but he became the biggest band in ever in the world. I have probably made mistakes, and I know I have, whereby I have probably disregarded someone's resume, and I haven't met with somebody, but actually they've been the perfect candidate for the role. But that does happen, but by the very nature of the volume of the information that we get sent, it does happen. It's going to happen, and I apologize for that. But I am only human, I guess. So what I would say is that actually a lot of candidates get the recruiters that they deserve. And I don't mean that in an aggressive way, but I think that as candidates, if you are sending resumes through, as I said, for multiple jobs, for not turning up for the meeting with the recruiter, or being dressed inappropriately and sort of wearing beachwear, and it doesn't give me the right impression of you and what you're looking for. And I think make the recruiter your friend. Give them the information that they're looking for. Explain any gaps in your career. Be very clear on your motivations of why you're looking for a new position. Is it money? Is it because you don't get on with the boss? Have the honest, talk with the recruiter. Share with the recruiter information on the market as you see it. Give them some intelligence about, your competitors or the companies that you work with. You might want to share that actually, HSBC are, a new roles coming available at HSBC that you've heard about. And tell the recruiter the sorts of organizations or companies and the people that you would like to work for or with. Give that information. Don't expect the recruiter just to have a magic wand and provide a role because you're unhappy at where you are. You have to work with them. You have to build that trust, and you have to almost treat the recruiter like a friend. So I think that's really important.
So that's great, Chris. Can you talk about the relationship, though, with your clients? That what we hear a lot is that, and you please correct me if this is incorrect, but the perception is that clients want a very skilled assistant, but they don't want to pay a fair salary for them. What is
I think
is that accurate?
Well, I think in some ways yes and no. What I would say, the relationship with the client is, clients are very specific about their needs and their requirements. I think what disappoints me dealing with clients is not always do I get to meet the person, the manager, for who the assistant is going to be working with or for. So often I'm dealing with a hiring manager or an HR professional who's been given a task to find an executive assistant or personal assistant for an executive. It's not easy to really find out what that person really wants or is looking for unless you can sit down and have 15, 20 minutes with that manager and say, what is it that's important to you? What's desirable, but what's essential? What skills does this person really need to have? And what are the reasons why this role has come around? So I would say that clients are very, very specific in their needs, incredibly specific in terms of what they want. So not every role that I have will suit everybody. But what's difficult for the recruiter is often in administrative posts, such as personal or executive assistants, is we don't always get to meet the ultimate manager which the person will be working for. And that, in a way, means we fly slightly blind.
Right. I imagine it's difficult, though, when they say, you say, well, what salary are you wanting to pay for this? And they tell you a salary that you feel does not match the role.
Yes.
How do you deal with that?
Well, I'm very honest with the client. If I think the client is underpaying, then I will tell them. And if I think that it's going to be an issue for candidates, then I have to say to the client, I think the money that you're offering for this role is not going to get the type of person that you are seeking. It really does come down to that, and actually I do turn roles down as well as I do turn candidates down in terms of I choose not to work with certain people because I think that where you've got a client which is doesn't really want to communicate about money, it makes it very difficult for me as a recruiter to explain to the candidate, that process. And I think that it puts in the candidate's mind, there's an issue here. And that suddenly that becomes a major issue for them. So I think if you're looking for a world-class PA, you have to pay the money which the market demands. If you're not wanting to pay it, you'll get what you deserve. It's as simple as that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then there's a saying that I've heard that goes that you're not going to get what you deserve. You're going to get what you negotiate.
Yeah. That's absolutely right. But I think that it's, I think, as I said, previously, it's a matchmaking service. So, unless all the boxes are ticked, then the marriage between the workplace marriage between the assistant and the manager is not going to work unless there's some commitment to actually pay what is really what the market suggests we should do.
Right. Oh, wow. This is great. So that leads me right into the whole idea of the job interview, which is critical. The resume is designed to motivate the goal is to get that interview. So the candidates in the interview, as a recruiter, what do you tell your candidates are the do's and don'ts of interviewing, Chris?
First thing I have to say to all candidates who secure an interview is 50% of the task is already done. So relax. You don't have to worry about the person that's interviewing you already believes that you can do the role, because they're not going to waste their time by seeing somebody who clearly is not capable of doing the job. So 50% of it has been completed.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really good point.
If you're running, your 400 meters, you've already done 200 meters, and you're coming into the final stretch. So it's just about confirming for that hiring manager that yes, you can do the role. So, the basics: be on time, look the part. There's a saying: dress for the job that you want, not the one that you have.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really disappointing to give candidates feedback about their appearance. So, if it's an advertising agency, are they going to be trendy? Potentially. So therefore, dress appropriately. But I would always be very, very formally attired. If that's the default, that's what I would choose. Research the company. Research the person you're going to be working for. Don't stalk them on LinkedIn and send them invitations to, connect. That's going a little bit too far. But I think, definitely show an interest in the sector and the industry that you're going to work for. Have some questions prepared. Talk to the interviewer as if they are a human being. Be open, be friendly, smile, have all the body language, the positive body language that, all of that information is on the internet. We can all find that out. That's absolutely fine. And the interviewer wants you to succeed. You're taking the risk away by giving them the information that they want, because, as I said before, changing roles is risky. It's also risky for the interviewer and the organization as well as the candidate. So minimize that risk. Don't be evasive in your, answer the questions and just be genuinely interested in the organization you're going to talk to.
Great. So what are some of the mistakes is there a couple of big mistakes that people have made in the past, stories that caused them to totally blow it, Chris?
I think people that are relying on Google Maps, sometimes Google Maps is not as accurate as it could be, and I've had candidates who have, turned up in the wrong side of the street, literally, and have then been late for their interview. I think that's, in this day and age, I would always say to candidates, make sure you're at least 20 minutes early. There's always going to be a coffee shop or a Starbucks or something that you can go and, go and relax for 10 minutes, have a cup of tea or coffee or whatever, and chill out. So always find where you're going and don't leave it to the last minute.
Yeah.
And don't rely on things like Google Maps just to pinpoint the way. Make sure you've actually been there before and that you know how long the journey is going to take, and anything that can go wrong, so that you, as an assistant, you foresee problems. Because one of the basic tenets of the role is dealing with and foreseeing issues for your manager. That's what you do. So never be late. Always be appropriately dressed. Always. And as I say, be prepared. Be prepared to meet other people. Be prepared, if, for example, if the role is working for the CFO or the marketing director, be prepared that actually the chief exec or the chairman of that business may walk into that meeting room. So always be prepared to meet other people. Have copies of your resume with you in your bag. Make sure your telephone is switched off, not on vibrate, not on silent, but actually switched off.
Love it.
Because there's nothing worse, more disconcerting than having, some in your bag, a phone, a telephone, a cell phone that's vibrating. It's very off-putting.
Right.
So, Chris, the interview starts the moment you get to reception. Do you have any stories? Do you have any stories? Like, wasn't there a story about the tea somebody's offered tea or something.
Yes.
Well, yeah, I mean, I did actually. This is, I think this is, it's slightly unfortunate for the candidate, but I did have a candidate who was going to work for an American firm, and when she was shown into the meeting room, the interviewer asked if she would like a drink, and the candidate said yes, being it's in London at 3 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon, could she possibly have a cup of tea? And actually, the interviewer thought that that was a very bold request, and candidates should normally only drink or ask for water. I think that's going really far. I think that that's a little unfair on the candidate, but my default position would be to ask for water, and I wouldn't ask for something more complicated than that.
That's a good point.
If I may, one of our students shared this one with us, that the interview actually begins from the moment, if you're driving, that you're driving into the parking lot. Vic, I'm remembering one of the students saying that she followed a person into the parking lot and they were driving really slow or something, and she, just made it clear that she was unhappy with that person. And it turned out that that was a person who worked in the department that she was going to be in. And that as soon as you enter the building, everyone is watching you or could potentially have input to your hiring. So you're really cautious. Someone brought in food, and so the food, everything your interview begins as soon as you enter the property of the space that you're going to be in,
actually, wasn't there something on the web that went viral that the guy was taking the tube or the train, I can't remember what part of the world they were in, but they got mad at the person on the train, and it turned out it was the hiring manager they were interviewing with. So really, the interview starts when you leave your house.
You just never know, right?
You never know.
Yeah. I mean, those examples, obviously, the coincidence of that happening is obviously hugely remote. But I think you're absolutely right in saying that, when you do walk into that building and you are interacting with the reception team, is that you are present and appropriate for that environment, because those receptionists are often will be judging you very, very closely and will report back to the hiring manager at what they think that you would like.
And how about the people that you ride up the elevator with? Those people have influence as well. That's happened to me, being in the elevator with someone who ended up having influence on whether I was going to get hired or not. And then I ended up running into him afterwards, and he said, "So, did you get the job?" And I had no idea that he knew that that's what I was there to do. So
it's a very small world.
It's
a cliche, but it is a very, very small world. And the amount of that you can, the degrees of separation are very, very few. Be very careful.
We're being recorded at every level. Yeah. I mean, I have that constantly, that Big Brother is watching, that we're all on video. So I think those are really important points to have made. So good.
Yeah.
What's your feeling about thank you notes and follow-up? What's your advice to candidates about those?
I think it depends. I think obviously, if there's a recruiter that's in the middle, then it's probably not terribly relevant, unless you want to say to the recruiter, "Please will you pass on my thanks to the hiring manager for meeting me and to express an interest again within the role." I think you can definitely do that, and actually I quite like it if candidates do that. If you're dealing with a client directly, then yes, I would definitely write and thank them for the time, because I do think that it's something that's memorable, and so few people do it that it does make you stand out from the crowd. Definitely. But I think do keep it to, a short paragraph or two. I mean, I don't think it needs red roses and a bottle of champagne, but I think, thanking someone for their time in expressing or re-expressing your interest in the role, I think is perfectly acceptable thing to do, and actually a very nice touch.
Right.
And Bonnie, you and I know of an employer that they had really good, successful interviews with candidates, but what was important to them was the follow-up, and they also wanted to know that the person was interested in the role. So the person that emailed they're like, thank you very much for the interview today, for your time. I love the idea of, you know, this role and working with you. That was the person who got the job.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
No, I think it's a great thing.
emailing the thank you and then a snail mailed one. It's, you know, there's all kinds of articles on the internet. You know, are handwritten thank you notes old school, and are they old fashioned, and are they out of
Well,
date? And I think the answer is definitely not. That it's important to do that. That we're, you know, as you said, you're human, Chris, and make mistakes. Well, we are all people, and we want to be appreciated. And so those thank you notes
yeah.
can mean a lot to
I
employers.
think they definitely do, and I think they do, and I think that, you know, it's not always that you'll have the email address of the person, you know, that interviewed you or that you met. So I think a letter, you know, if you can't find the email address or you don't have it, then a letter, I think, is perfect.
Right.
And as I say, it doesn't need to be more than a paragraph.
Yeah, and one other point about this is that all of these documents, whether it's the resume, the cover letter, emails, snail mail, thank you note, all of these, would you agree, are examples of your work, aren't they?
Completely.
Yeah.
Completely, which is, you know, which is the previous point that I think that we were talking about, which is the quality of the resume that comes through. If the resume is of such poor quality that, you know, it's full of spelling mistakes or grammatical errors or bullet points where there is no text attached to it, why on earth, as a recruiter, would I choose to represent that person to a client of mine who I have built a relationship with? It's a risk to me, and I keep coming back to this word risk. There is such an inherent risk in this process, because if I send somebody along who, you know, clearly is not suitable for the position, the client's going to think, well, he doesn't know what we want. He clearly hasn't understood the brief. He's got no idea of how to do this. Look at the sort of people he's sending. So it's all about minimizing risk, and it's just about those little details which you mentioned, the thank you notes, the correctly, you know, the correct form. That's what people are looking for, and that's what sets you apart from being a good assistant to being world class.
Well, it's all about your personal brand and your image.
Yes,
And that
absolutely.
kind of, yeah, that leads me to ask you this question about LinkedIn. How important is LinkedIn in today's job market?
I think it's absolutely vital, and I think that, you know, again, as you referred to as the personal brand, I probably don't spend as much time on my LinkedIn as I should do, but actually, you know, I have sort of, you know, maybe 1 or 2 days a month where I sort of, you know, spend hours and hours and hours sort of connecting with people and talking to people, and I find it, and it always surprises me how useful it really is. So yes, I think as a profile, you should definitely have a profile, but please, please, please make the profile image, which there definitely should be one. Don't make it one of you sitting on the beach enjoying a cocktail, because it's a business tool. It's not a social media tool for sharing with friends and family. It's a business tool, and therefore it should be business-like. And again, you know, your profile and all the text that you put up there should be correct.
Yeah,
It's
I agree.
really important.
And one tip I give to our students is, you know, if you're wondering what kind of photo to put up on your LinkedIn account, is just go scan, type in executive assistant in the search field in your market, and just scan all the photos of the people that come up and determine, like, who would you hire and who would you not hire. Just based on a photo, just based on the professionalism of the photo. I'm not talking about the attractiveness of the person, but the professionalism of the photo itself.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think actually a black and white photo often looks better than in terms of more professional than the color one. And you know, it's you know, as I say, make it business-like. I mean, you know, you don't have to sort of be sitting there with a laptop or an iPad or something in front of you and holding a pen, but just make it look business. Make it look business-like, and make it look, you know, you brush your hair and that the appearance is smart and tidy, and as you say, you know, your dressing and your appearance is for the job that you want, not necessarily the one that you have.
Yeah. Would it hurt somebody if they didn't have a LinkedIn profile, Chris?
No, I don't think it hurts, but I think that you're limiting your choices and your chances of landing that dream job if you don't. Because I think we touched on before that most people actually find roles that are not used, they don't use recruiters, they use other means such as networking or friends or family or whatever it is. So, you're limiting your chances of success if you don't have one, but obviously there's no requirement for you to have one. I would recommend that you do.
Yeah, as would Vicky and I, for sure.
Yeah.
I'd like to move on to the hot topic of money. Well, we know that there's a wage gap in the world where women are making 80 cents, at least in the United States, 80 cents for every dollar a man makes. And the data shows that even though, as you say, more men are joining the profession, Chris, the current statistic is that 95 to 98% of all the assistants in the world, of which there are 1/2 billion, that's B as in billion, are female. So many assistants are reporting that they are seriously underpaid in the workplace. What is your opinion about money? I know it's a big topic, but in general, can you talk to us about money and your advice to candidates who are looking to land their dream job that's going to pay very, very well and have a lot of responsibility?
Sure. I think salary is very dependent on the sector in which you are working. So, the financial crash of 2007 onwards, would have seen people working in investment banking or retail banking. Their salaries were generally frozen or cut. Bonuses were, dispensed with. And I don't think they've really recovered. Particularly, I'm not sure what it's like in New York or in the States, for example, but I think in London, a lot of people still, their salaries haven't really kept pace with the cost of living, and I think that's a major concern for lots of people. But I think a lot of those people then tend to be drawn to what I would call smaller financial services businesses, the hedge funds, the private equity groups, the corporate advisory outfits. They tend to pay quite well, and the bonus structure in those businesses is interesting. It tends to be based upon, they're all discretionary. So there's generally very little that's contractual in terms of the employer, but they tend to pay salaries, let's say, some of them up to 150,000 US. So, to me, that's quite a well-paid position. But with that comes responsibility, and with that becomes they can pick the very best people that they want, and it comes down to, again, it's the right attitude, it's the right skills for that person to have. And I think that it's dangerous, I think, to consider money or salary or remuneration as the sole motivation for work. And I think it has to come down to more than that. But I think that if there are lots and lots of online resources and information that you can, to see what the typical salary within your sector at your peer group is. And if you're below that, then I think it's perfectly reasonable and to go and talk to your manager to say, look, hang on a minute, I think that, I'm underpaid. But I think with that, you need to have evidence. And I think it should never be done in anger or desperation. I think it should be an adult, grown-up conversation. Listen, people want to recruit people based on three things. They want someone to make money. They like people that save money, and they like people that manage others. So making money for an assistant can be difficult because you're not selling. But what you are doing is saving your boss, your manager, you're saving them time, making them more productive, and hopefully, as a business, that business is growing and developing and entering new markets and selling more products or adding additional services. So you have to be able to demonstrate that your intervention by looking after that executive saves 15, 20% of that executive's time to allow them to concentrate to do better things or money-making exercises, that's what you need. You need that evidence to be able to do that.
Indeed. And
that, to me, that's a proper business case. That, to me, is not an emotional response, but a considered response, which is completely different.
Yeah. And that's precisely why we bring in recruiters like you to BTUA, because, if we're all understanding that the profession is dominated by females, in general, females see the showing evidence, you used that term, showing evidence, they see that in general as tooting their own horns or bragging. And it's a negative thing. And so we're wanting this podcast in our classes to promote the idea that we must advocate for ourselves, and to show evidence is not a negative thing. It's a very positive thing that we're supporting our managers by doing so. And I'm so glad you're saying that. Thank you.
I love that.
Okay.
Yep. So, Chris, let me ask you, one of the last questions I want to ask you is, if you were trapped, I'm kidding, not trapped, but if you had a group of CEOs in front of you or heads of HR listening to you right now, what would you say to them?
I would tell the CEO or the HR director or professional that an excellent executive assistant, personal assistant, will pay back the investment made in them many, many, many times over by the huge increase in the productivity of the manager that they are looking after. And I think that I would also say is, for once, why don't they please take this recruitment process seriously? They wouldn't recruit a CFO or a marketing director in such a sort of casual or cavalier way. So why do they persist in taking such an approach with assistants? And I see it all of the time. And I think the whole system needs to be reassessed and improved, because it's such a messy way of doing it. And I think, as I said, it's a senior member of their team. And why do they persist in doing it in such a casual way? I don't understand it. And I'm trying to change that. But, it's early days.
Yeah. Well, I think we interviewed co-founder of Priceline, Jeff Hoffman, in one of our episodes, and we also interviewed Simon Sinek in that respect, and their perspectives to the CEOs about the importance of that partnership with the assistant. So we'll make sure we include the links to those episodes. So if you are a CEO or HR director, hiring manager looking for that perfect partner match for the executive, we'll definitely include those episodes for you.
Right. Well, I, for one, am so grateful, Chris, that you're out there advocating and educating. It really is an education process.
Thank you.
We need to have a much more open dialogue, I think, between recruiters and CEOs and assistants and HR hiring managers. They're
Absolutely. The system actually doesn't really work. It is broken, I think, and I think that there are fundamental improvements could be made that would actually make it easier for everybody and actually more productive for everybody. And surely that ultimately is the goal for everyone, is the productivity and the happiness within the role and the satisfaction. And that's what I'm trying to do with this. So thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, well,
absolutely. Well, thank you for being passionate about creating that successful match. There are a lot of recruiters that are in it for the wrong reasons, and you can tell that you're very passionate about creating that successful partnership. So thank you for what you do, Chris.
Thank you. Not at all. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. We've enjoyed having you on the show. So I'm going to go back to my story about my dream job and the lesson learned from that, from making the decision to switch from being an assistant to now supporting an assistant. And one additional thing that I want to add to this, what I've learned, was that the moment, Bonnie, that you called me and said you wanted to create a 2-day workshop. And do you want to share with everybody that kind of the start of that story, and I'll add to that.
So when I decided that I had to create this 2-day workshop to support assistants who wanted to work at the very highest levels, it came to me pretty quickly that I needed a very significant technology piece because, to succeed in this workplace, you absolutely need to be great at the soft skills, which is what I am passionate about, and also the hard skills of productivity and technology. And in my head, that meant one person. That meant Vicki Evans. So I knew Vicki has 2 little boys, and I called her on the phone in Texas. I'm in New Jersey. And I said, so Vicki, I'm designing this 2-day workshop, and it's going to be awesome. It's for the highest level assistants. Can you teach me how to teach the technology piece? Can you teach me what I should be teaching and how to teach it? And you said...
And so here in my mind, as she's asking me this, I'm thinking to myself, how selfish of her to want to want to do my job. She's talking about my dream job, and she wants to just take my dream job away from me. And I'm like, well, can I just help you teach it? Can I do it? Can I teach the technology portion? And yeah, why don't I just do it and like get to travel around the world, meet people like Chris Taylor, and
Yeah,
talk
because
to people all over the world.
but no, Vic, you don't understand. That means coming to New York and going to Dallas and going to Chicago. I want to take this training to the assistants. Can you do that? And you
Yeah, and like this is my dream job, Bonnie. You're essentially handing over on the silver platter my dream job, the second part of my dream job. So no, I'm going with you whether you like it or not. And so the lesson here is that it's the collaboration and who you work with is all part of identifying and understanding that you're in your dream job. So I think the importance of working with recruiters like you, Chris, and kind of being that matchmaker and putting an assistant in their perfect role, working with their perfect manager and partner, and that's not an easy thing to do because it is a relationship that has to be developed in partnership. So you know, Bonnie and I have been really, really lucky over the years to be able to collaborate and work together, and she's been my mentor and vice versa. So that's the other piece of it. And so I would encourage anyone, whether you're a candidate or the hiring manager, to reach out to people like Chris Taylor, or just reach out to Chris, actually, and help him create that dream job opportunity for you. So that was my lesson. Yeah, right. Absolutely.
It's creating that environment. I think that's what we're trying to do. So it's a win for everybody.
Right. And I also think it goes back to Simon Sinek's episode about finding your why and why you get up every day. And if you're doing that, like every morning you get up and you're excited about going to work because of the people you work with or because of what you get to do every single day, then that's your dream job, and you're lucky to get paid for doing it. So we'll definitely include the link to Simon's 2 episodes when he and his assistant were on with us, and because I think it was a great episode. So Chris, tell us what the next steps are for our listeners. What should they do? Why would someone reach out to you? When should they reach out to you?
I think whether it's a candidate or a organisation that's looking to hire an individual is have a chat with me. Obviously, if I'm in, if you're in London, then by all means, let's meet. And if obviously if overseas, then Skype or call GoToMeeting is a fantastic way of communicating. And be delighted to talk to anybody just about how they see the market, how they see the environment, what their concerns are. It's a conversation, and I think that I'm more than happy to have that kind of people, and I look forward to people reaching out to me. So by all means, email me or call me, and I think you're going to put some of the details on the BTUA website, I think.
Absolutely, and that's your preferred way of communicating, right, to actually meet the candidate first, to get to know the candidate?
I think so, yes. It's easier. It's easier to have that face-to-face conversation. I think it's more relaxed than doing it over a telephone. And I think just really be very clear though on your motivations and what you're looking for in your next career move, and and again sort of think back to those 3 main things which I've talked about, is the evidence surrounding how you make money, how you save money, and how you manage others. They're the 3 golden rules.
Wow, that's great. Thank you so much, Chris. This has been so wonderful.
Okay, thank you. No, it's been absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much.
Great.
So, Chris, do you have a final thought for our listeners today?
Yes, I think assistants, wherever they are in the world, are generally unsung and underappreciated and underpaid. But I think the responsibility for that is shared, and I don't think it's entirely the fault of the organisation or the managers. And I think it's not about being a victim or playing a victim, and I think that EAs need to discover, a bit of self-worth and some pride, and try and sort of visualize and sort of create what success looks like. And, in 2016, surround yourself with positive role models and positive people that will help you keep that mental attitude to be the very best. That's what I would say.
Love that. Thank you so much, Chris. Oh my gosh, thank you for for spending this time with us, and I'm sure the
No,
listeners
not at all.
agree.
Thank you.
This is really helpful.
It's been a pleasure.
Oh, good, good. So, Bonnie, you have a final quote for us?
Yeah, actually, I have a thought in light of all of the things that we've talked about, and that is one thing I remember when I left Olympia and went off to create this thing with you, Vicki, called Be the Ultimate Assistant. There were some people in my life who basically said, "Are you crazy to follow this dream? You're going to do this? You're going to leave this sure thing for a dream?" And the answer is yes. So I'm here to say something that Olympia used to say all the time, and that is, this is not a rehearsal. That that's life, that is, if your instinct is telling you to follow a certain path, whatever it is, if it means leaving a job, if it's really time to go, or staying at a job because you're discovering, you know what, I want to make this work. I want to really flesh this out. I want to take on more responsibility. I'm here to say, Vicki's here to say, Chris is here to say that we want you to follow your dream and that we want to support you to do it. So thank you, Chris Taylor, for being here with us. And that's what I feel like I want to wrap up with. Thanks, Vic.
Absolutely, I like that. This is not a rehearsal. I wish it was. Sometimes. do over that mistake, please.
Well, yeah, hindsight's a beautiful thing.
Right. Thank you again, Chris. Really appreciate your time.
No, not at all. Thanks a lot.
Awesome. Well, this concludes today's episode. We'd love your feedback, topic ideas, and questions. Visit the podcast page at betheultimateassistant.com. Thank you once again to our amazing guest, Chris Taylor, and to you for listening. We'll see you next time. Bye, Bonnie.
Bye, Vicki.
Bye, Chris.
Bye, Bonnie. Bye, Vicky.